Do you have any idea why the Christian idea of the soul has been replaced by the materialistic idea of the mind? In this video, we are going to explore how psychology, which is a word that has been coined in the 15th century, took 4 centuries to emerge as the dominant explanation we have for human destiny. For centuries, the dominant model people had to explain the human destiny was religion. And people were not even aware that it was a religious standpoint. That was the normal way to explain the world. But this slowly changed around the 18th century because a massive change occurred in the mentality. We call that cultural wave the Enlightenment. And what it has really boosted and revolutionized is the interest for science, technology, global trade, and the political liberalism. So basically, all we consider as the Western culture has been completely reframed during the Enlightenment. And one of the many effects of the Enlightenment is that talking about the soul was no longer a fashionable subject for educated people. As the philosopher Immanuel Kant stated, the soul is something that a rational discourse or study we may call nowadays a scientific study is not possible. So it's a private experience. We know we have a soul, but people from the outside do not see the soul. So it's better to keep it for ourselves and to do science about something else. In the 19th century, the very idea of soul that is disappearing have left a void, and it is progressively filled by a new type of interest about what we may call nowadays the mind, and it is a precursor of modern psychology. And we can see that especially in the novel and how people create the psychological makeup of their character. We can also see that in the emergence of a new discipline among medicine, which we call psychiatry. We can even see that in the criminal justice, because from the Enlightenment, people start to plead madness. That means there is an interest for what's going on in people's mind. So we can sense that during the 19th century, the very idea of mind is growing, but it still needs someone to play a detonator in the Western culture to allow the science of psychology to emerge, and that person is Charles Darwin. In the Christian idea of humanity, we have been created in the image and likeness of God. That means we have a special status different from the one of the animals, and not mentioning vegetables or minerals. And that is exactly what Darwin has deeply changed. And Darwin piggybacked on the Aristotelian idea of the soul we have described in an earlier video. So basically, all human nature is just the product of a biological evolution. And actually, the mental power we humans have is just the product of having a very fragile physical frame. So we don't have fangs, we don't have powerful muscle. So we had to develop something. And well, basically we developed the mind, which is just an adaptive tool. So with Darwin, the mind becomes just something that grew out of biology. It's no longer a God's gift. And this changed everything. This made possible to study scientifically the mind as you study scientifically the physical organs. Scholars usually agreed that modern psychology is born in 1879 in Leipzig, when Wilhelm Wundt created the first laboratory of experimental psychology. And what is very interesting about Wundt is that no psychologists remember what he had discovered with his laboratory, but what really matters is that he had a scientific methodology to deal with the mind. And so psychology is born when we start to study scientifically the mind. At first, the academic psychology has a very modest start. It was just a bunch of crazy scholars who wanted to do something in between biology and philosophy. But through time, and now that discipline has 140 years, it gained strength, it gained a better and better methodology as they were systematically studying what people were saying, what people were doing, their nonverbal communication, their physiological response, the brain activation. They start to use more and more complex mathematical models to understand. They start to videotape people. They start to use brain imagery. And we may say that nowadays it's a very respected discipline, and in all domains of knowledge, most of all human sciences, politics, history, economics, they are also referring to psychology. Even modern theologians use psychology. That means that now it has gained the status of the most popular way to explain the human destiny. But as it was the case with the spiritual soul that has been massively abused by some powerful people, modern psychology has also been abused. And one of the best examples of that is the very famous experiment of Stanley Milgram. So basically, what Stanley Milgram wanted to do is to prove that good people set in a place where they were compelled by a scientist to give electric shock would do so even if they know it may kill the person in front. And the idea of Stanley Milgram was to prove that within a normal context, normal people would do horrible things just to submit to someone who presents himself as an authority. So you may say that somehow it has taught us a good lesson of humanity, that we are not as morally strong as we believe. But that very experiment is also taught in the schools of torture, because if you understand what makes people to submit to the authority, which is, there are some inner traits like being very perfectionistic. You know how to recruit good torturer. You need someone with a high level of perfectionism. So to get someone who is very efficient at torturing people, you don't need a psychopath. To the contrary, you need someone who is a very good person and that will do its duty, even if it's horrible. So we can say that the experiment of Milgram has been used upside down to facilitate the human resource in recruiting good torturer. As we live more and more in a world that has been infused by psychology, the entire society has become sick of several modern diseases due to that interest for psychology. The first is that as the mind is something you can measure, and as psychologists has developed a whole set of tools to measure, for instance, the IQ. You can also measure a lot of things like the emotional capacities, the attachment, the attention. People start to measure everything and feels more and more anxious to be highly ranked, because measuring is to compare to a group, and the more you measure, the more people get obsessed by their ranking. That's one aspect. A second aspect is the fact that the mind is previsible, and nowadays the algorithms that are ruling the social media are excellent at identify what are your preferences, and it can really predict which will be your response and how you are going to respond in the future. So it is a very powerful tool that is used usually to gain control on you and to put a tag on everyone's forehead. The last part, which is a logical consequence of that, is that the mind is malleable, and we know more and more technique to manipulate or to nudge people in one direction or to another. And the more you know about psychology, the better you are at selling your ideas and manipulating people. So we tend to think that people have been horribly manipulated by religion in the past, and it's pretty much the same situation nowadays, but psychology became a source of social problems. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, but it's a bad side effect of modern psychology. Modern psychology has deeply transformed the way we conceive the world, and we may say that there is a lot of positive transformation that are the direct product of the development of the psychology. Let's take the development of the IQ, which is a tool that has been created to help to reorient people with learning disability to get access to special education, which is a very good thing for people. Another aspect is that due to the development of the attachment theory, we know that an orphanage is a very bad environment to grow in, and nowadays we have foster parents, which is a far more suitable environment to raise people who lost their parents. So that's for the positive side. But the wrong side of psychology is that the more we know the mind, and the more we know how to measure it, how to predict its behavior, and how to manipulate it, the more we turn human into Frankensteins. And this is a very sad side effect of modern psychology that can be rebalanced. And actually, within psychology, there were some minority branches that tried to develop another focus of interest than the one on the mind. And this is what we are going to explore in our fourth video.